Good evening and welcome to the L.A.Steel show. I'm Leila. I'm your host for tonight's show. We're here in Mystic at the office of the Connecticut Coalition Against Millstone. We're here to film Winona LaDuke, the vice presidential candidate on the ticket of the Green Party with Ralph Nader. I hope you find tonight's show informative.
Course is an international environmentalist. In 1994, Time magazine honored her as one of the most promising women under 40 in this United States of America. She is the author of 2 books. We have them here for you to see and purchase and possibly, if we have time, autograph today. And at this time, I would like to warmly welcome the next Vice President of the United States of America. Hi there. Can you all hear me okay?
Yeah.
Bonjour, or Aline, as we say in my neck of the woods. I'm pleased and honored to be with you today. I just came down from Schmitzen, as some of you may have heard, as I jingled my way in. But I'm also pleased to be here with people who are struggling against nuclear power. And I really encourage you in your work. It is absolutely important that we close down the Millstone nuclear power plant and every other nuclear power plant in this country. Spent pretty much my entire adult life, unfortunately, looking at the issue of uranium mining, which is the front end of what is known as the nuclear fuel cycle. But it's not a cycle, it's actually a chain, because uranium is not the same thing as plutonium, from what I can ascertain. That would mean that you end up with a waste product, which is what we have. And in the late 70s, I worked out on the Navajo reservation on uranium mining issues. And that is a place where there are over 1,000 abandoned uranium mine shafts today, and open pit mines which still emit radiation into the environment. And hundreds of Navajo uranium miners were sent underground into uranium mine shafts to pull out uranium ore for companies like McGee and Mobil for $1.64 an hour. And they breathed air with no ventilation shafts in it. And they drank water from the bottom of uranium mines, and there isn't a word in Navajo for radiation. And so you could not have informed consent as to what the possible health impacts of that were to those people. But the irony is that you and I paid, or some of you and I, or my parents at least, paid for that program in the 70s. As McGee uranium mining program was funded by the Bureau of Labor, the Department of Labor, to send them underground into those uranium mine shafts for $1.64 an hour. And that is indicative of the problems of corporate welfare. And that is indeed indicative of the problems of nuclear. 10% of all research and development money in the Department of Energy went to nuclear and coal. That is where all of our money went. And imagine if that we have no idea what to do about. So today, last week or 2 weeks ago, I was in New Mexico and Arizona. Again, I was in New Mexico. And the sad irony of the situation is that 20 years ago, we went and we worked on stopping uranium mining in this country and those Indian reservations in the West, and we went and largely spent a lot of time at all these nuclear reactors on the East Coast, and these utilities, cheap and clean and free, and there were no health consequences. It was like power too cheap to be metered, as I remember one of the great. So I spent a lot of my time, and we spent a lot of our time putting a face. When you're killing miners to produce uranium to fuel nuclear power plants, it is not free entities. And so we worked to a lot of these nuclear power plants in this country, and it is the consequence of a lot of the anti-nuclear work of the past couple of decades that they're not, that is education. I don't want any more nuclear power plants, and that is why we have 109 or 104. So that is a great gift to people that have been if the government and the nuclear industry had its way. But the sad thing is that uranium mining, closing them down for demand. On the Navajo reservation 2 weeks ago, and I found a mine that 20 years ago we stopped, they're starting to open, and I said, underneath or above. To have uranium underneath you and know that your entire life, each generation, somebody will come and try to take that out of the ground and irradiate your groundwater, which is so precious in that area. So we pledged to work with that community, which is Crown Point, Eastern Navajo Agency. But that is in fact kind of the situation you find yourselves in here. A situation of a bad set of deals that someone made a lot of money off of. and that we underwrote as taxpayers or as ratepayers. This nuclear power industry, and today we find ourselves in a situation where we have nuclear waste that sits on site, the nuclear waste that they want to send across the country to Indian reservations, Yucca Mountain. And in the new millennium, one must ask a question, which is, how can we have such a set of decisions, such a set of policies? How do we transform them? I'm a parent. I don't know how many of you are parents, but in my house we have a little deal, which usually works, which is you cannot make a new mess until you clean up your old mess. That's our deal. And why do we not have that deal with the nuclear industry? Why is there a presumption that nuclear power plants like Millstone and others can keep producing waste, and someday someone, the nuclear waste fairy, will come and clean up the waste? I have news. There is no nuclear waste fairy. Will not be arriving anytime soon. And so the deal that most parents would make is that if you don't know how to clean up your mess, you better quit making it. And that is what we need to do with this nuclear reactor. We need to close it down and decommission it. That is the answer to the nuclear power crisis in this country. So I encourage you and thank you for all your work, and urge you forward and on and say to you that things that you already know, which are that there are many alternatives. We are a country which is the richest country in the world. We have a stock exchange which is the value of all other stock exchanges in the world combined. We have no absence of money. What we have is an absence of political will. And that is part of what our campaign is about. It's challenging that paradigm and saying, here are some people who are standing up who have a political will to do the right thing, to close down nuclear power in this country and move towards alternative energy. Because that is what we should be about in the new millennium. That is absolutely what we should be about. As people who live, my reservation's in the eastern part of the Great Plains. And they say that the Great Plains is the Saudi Arabia of wind power in this country. And I see farm after farm that closes up out there, and I see Indian reservation after Indian reservation in absolutely abject poverty. That's the reality. And some of those communities, they say North Dakota alone could produce half the U.S. wind generating potential, or half the U.S. energy potential. It's like immense. There's like very windy states, reservations with class 5, class 7. My reservation has class 4 wind potential. We're putting up a wind generator on my reservation. A small thing. You know, we're a small community. We aren't nearly as wealthy as any of these utilities. But we're putting up a wind generator because we know the consequences of our consumption. And so that is what I say, that us as American people, as people who live here on this land, we need to be about the process, and our government needs to be about the process of underwriting alternative energy. Why is it that the Danes and the Germans lead the world in wind energy technologies? Why is it that they generate so much power in their countries and we are so far behind? Is it because the Danes and the Germans are really handy? That may be true. Maybe they are really handy. They have some money, but we have more. It is that question of political will. It is not a strange and bizarre thing to have wind or solar power. It is the right thing, and it is a really smart thing to do. So that is what we must move towards, as well as conserving, quit squandering that third of our power. We pretty much just lose, waste. That's what we do. I feel like the electrical fairy in my house. You know, you have enough children in your house and you spend about half of your time turning off things that they have turned on. Isn't that right? Is that like every mother's, you know, I'm like, where do you think the power comes from, kids? But that is obviously not my children and their lack of turning off lights is not actually the energy problem in this country. It's more like big industries that consume vast amounts of electrical power and vast amounts of money that could be transformed into less consumptive production cycles. But that is part of it. So in any case, this campaign is about that. It is about transforming to a society not based on conquest, but a society which is based on survival. It is about transforming to a society that looks towards not only alternative energy, but organic agriculture. That looks towards, in my words, I call it reconciliation. Reconciling our relationship with the land and reconciling our relationships with each other. That is what I believe we need to be about the process of in this new millennium. That means that we need to, instead of cut trees, we need to recycle paper, go for chlorine-free. The government, the Nader White House will purchase. We'll be purchasing chlorine-free and recycled paper and paper made from hemp. That is the fiber of the future. And even if, that George Bush Jr. Even would have paid attention, his grandfather, as Ralph has probably told you all many times, jumped out of a plane with a parachute made of hemp. So it's quite likely that George Jr. would not have even been here. And if someone in his family didn't use hemp. So we need to be careful of what we criticize. And we will also be a society which learns to reconcile our relationships with others. Whether that is dealing with issues like squandering a third of our money on the military instead of spending it on schools, on health care, on daycare. I'm often asked why it is that I would think I would know about these things, and I would say because I have kids that went to school in a trailer last year. My kids went to school in a trailer last year, and I know that there is enough money in this country for my kids to have adequate school facilities, but I know that that money is being spent making, don't we make nuclear submarines?
Right down the road.
It's right down the road. And making other things that we don't need. So we should feed our children, feed our elders, educate our families, our kids, take care of our health. That's what security is about. And that is that reconciliation process. We should also look at reconciling the economic disparities that exist in this country, which is the worst disparities of any industrialized country. The fewest rich and the most poor. And it is a shame. The rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. My grandpa, that's what those politicians always say, my grandpa. My grandfather, my grandmother was in the union. She was in the ILGWU, International Ladies Garment Workers Union, and she made pocketbooks all over. So I come from a long line of union supporters. And my grandfather was a house painter. And he used to call all the politicians hoodlums and thieves. And the sad thing is he was not actually that wrong. As things have come to be in this society. And that is what we need to transform. We need to ensure that you do not have to be a millionaire to run for office. Yes. That good people should be able to run for office because they have good things they want to talk about. And that is not just campaign finance reform, that is how we fund the whole thing. Ralph says that we should have 1 million people give 100 hours or $100 each. And since I'm a working mother, I had to lower it to $25 each or 25 hours, 4 million people. Yeah. More organizing work, but more realistic for a lot of us. 25 hours is more realistic for a lot of working mothers. That is how we should finance campaigns. And that is what we are asking people to do, to think about putting in some time, because that is how you reinvigorate this dialogue and where we are going in America. So, we believe in that. We believe in a living wage. In my neck of the woods, which is not like your neck of the woods, but it is a neck of the woods. Most of our people, 65% of the people on my reservation are unemployed, and 50% of the people are at or below the poverty level. So when welfare reform came to town, it was not a very good thing, because we don't have any known jobs. But they are in a town, border town to my reservation. They are waiting for the Walmart to move in. And I know a lot of you people out here spend your time fighting those Walmarts, but that is a sad thing when job growth is pinned on the introduction of corporations like that, where you can get paid $7 an hour as an associate. But 2 people working at that much, you're still at the poverty level. So we support a living wage. People should get paid a decent wage because people should not work and still be in poverty. While most Americans' wages have leveled out, CEOs' wages have increased 418% over the past decade. Well, that's an absolute shame. That's a disgrace. So you need to eliminate some of that corporate welfare at the top and give that money out in social services. There's a lot of simple things that could be done to make this society a better place. But those will require each of us to work in whatever ways we do. Ralph and I have spent most of our adult lives working in the nonprofit sector. I work mostly in grassroots organizations on environmental, rural development, native issues. That is one way to do work, and another way is to actually vote. So I encourage the largest party in America, the non-voters, that 50% of the American electorate who no longer votes or has never voted. I encourage them to think about it, to get out there and to decide. I believe that they got someone they can vote for.
Yeah.
All right, come on.
Winona LaDuke and her son. And I wanted to ask Winona, so that the folks at home would get a chance to know a little bit more about her personally. I understand that your heritage is American Indian as well as Jewish, which brings kind of a unique heritage to the vice presidency. And when I heard you talk, you were talking about your activism. Was that something that was present in your home when you were growing up?
Oh yeah. I grew up in my father was active in the Indian community, and as I was saying, my grandmother was in the union, and the ILGWU, she made pocketbooks in New York City, and my mother was active in the civil rights movement and the anti-war movement. And so I come from a family that always believed that you should do the right thing.
So you come from a long history of people who work.
That's right.
I was wondering, and I know the folks at home probably would like to know too, how you and Ralph Nader met and got together and you became his vice presidential candidate, not just in this election, but I know in the past.
96.
In the 96.
Ralph and I had actually met a couple of times at conferences before because we both have a long history of doing environmental work. But I never really spoken to him that much. And in '96, I was asked by the Green Party if I would run, and I declined. And then later I was asked if I would consider being on a list that Ralph would consider as a running mate. I consider that to be kind of a reasonable approach. I didn't think I'd be picked, and then he called me up and asked me. And I said, no. I was kind of a reluctant candidate at first because I have young children. But Ralph and I have got on quite well, 96.
Excellent.
And I was asked again this time I was 7 months pregnant. But Ralph is a very persuasive man.
I wanted to ask you, what do you think your main appeal is to the American people?
My appeal is that I'm like most of the American people. I come from a middle income. I'm not a millionaire. I don't have a 6-figure salary. I am a working mother. I have 3 children. I know what it is like to balance your budget in your house, and I think I can balance the federal budget really well. I know how to spend money. I know how to recycle. I know how to prioritize. And children are an absolute priority in my house. And I think that a lot of those issues resonate with the American people and come from a wellspring of experience and that.
I think you're absolutely right, and I hope the folks at home really get the flavor of Winona, because she's a very warm, humorous person, and it was really nice that you took the time to talk with us. Thank you so much.
This is Gwaikonamat Gasco, my son, my youngest, the caboose. I have 2 other children, and he is He's happy to be with you.
And I want you to know he's a great campaigner. He's very happy. A little sleepy, but very happy.
A little sleepy, a little poison ivy, but Green Party hasn't figured out a solution to that yet.
So much.
Oh, so